Carl, the state-defined happy gigger, was born as a rural child in a small Chinese city. Consequently, as he grew up, he inevitably underwent the standardized characteristic education of the nation, becoming patriotic, loyal to the party, easily impassioned, and filled with animosity toward Japan. However, as his life experience and worldview expanded, he gradually realized the truth of certain matters and attempted to go abroad. To his surprise, he met with unanimous opposition from everyone close to him. His father even sent long rants in a WeChat group, denouncing him as a spineless traitor to China. Through this, he encountered the topic we plan to discuss today on the Chinese intranet. How can one tear through the government's lies and tricks without relying on information from foreign forces? First, a thought struck him. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, boasts endlessly about everything it does for the people every single day. Yet, in reality, it offers jack shit. These grand promises, clauses, and regulations ought to be recorded in the Constitution, right? Starting right from the preamble, he felt the urge to start cursing. But since that is not today's focus, let's set it aside for now. As we can see, Article 1, the People's Republic of China is led by the working class, is already absurd enough. Does a single person in this country, with actual power, belong to the working class? If you went to any factory, picked a random worker, and told them, "You are one of the leaders of this nation," they would likely find it unbelievable. Articles 2 and 3 state that the people exercise their right to govern the state through electing representatives to the National People's Congress. Yet, in his entire life, he has never participated in a vote, nor has he ever heard of anywhere conducting an election, and the exact same goes for the vast majority of Chinese people. This kind of democracy is entirely nominal, a universally known fact rather than a slanderous claim. Even famous Chinese writers, documented on foreign force websites, say the very same thing. Articles 5 and 6 take the absurdity up a notch. They claim that all entities must abide by the Constitution and the law. All acts in violation of the Constitution and the law must be investigated. Yet, the reality is that they completely violate the slogan, "The people are the masters of the nation." Do you really think they will hold themselves accountable? As for the elimination of exploitation mentioned below, whether it has actually been eliminated or not is something every working Chinese citizen knows deep down in their heart. Now, look at Article 10. It assigns all so-called land ownership rights to nebulous concepts like the state and the collective, while allowing the government to requisition land. You aren't the collective. I'm not the collective. Nobody is the collective. Only the officials holding power get to decide who counts as the collective, and then proceed to do whatever they want under the banner of the collective interest. In the news, corrupt Chinese officials are caught by the handful. Anti-corruption campaigns happen daily. Yet the problem can never be rooted out for this very reason. If land were private property protected by law, these greedy gluttons would at least have to think twice before skinning the public alive. He was also reminded of the passionate CCP revolutionary dramas and movies he had watched since childhood. Back then, they duped everyone into risking their lives with slogans like, "Beat the landlords and divide the land." But once they seized power, the land didn't belong to the people at all. It was merely loaned to you by the state, to be reclaimed at any moment. After stripping the people of their property rights, they didn't use that control to secure public welfare. Instead, they turned land into a massive cash cow for the government. Countless individuals emptied the six pockets, their own savings, along with those of both sets of parents, just to buy a home, effectively transforming into chives harvested by the party. During China's boom years, its house price to income ratio far surpassed even peak era Japan, reaching utterly astonishing levels. There are still many absurdities in the Chinese constitution worth uncovering, but I've selected just a few prominent ones near the beginning to leave room for other topics. It must be emphasized that while the constitution appears foundational and lofty, the number of Chinese people who actually look up its text is as rare as hen's teeth. They have long been conditioned by the party into a state of chosen human mining, consumed by daily survival and stripped of any inclination to reflect on their rights or government power. The Constitution serves as a lavish cloak for the CCP to cover its shame, while Mao Zedong is the supreme deity they use to control the public mindset. In China, where the military, government, and ideological education are integrated into one, the image of Grandpa Mao in people's minds has long resembled a savior like Jesus, self-sacrificing and delivering humanity from suffering. To expose this deception, pulling Mao off his pedestal is crucial. Thus, we can simply open Baidu Baike, the mainland Chinese encyclopedia, to examine Mao's biography. To be sure, claims from foreign forces about the beloved chairman, that he lived in luxury and indulged in debauchery with young women, might be dismissed as anti-CP slander. However, even official mainland sources acknowledge a notable number of wives. As traitor Karl clicked through the profiles of Mao's wives, his Zizhen caught his attention. Official records acknowledge that he was pregnant at least 6 times, while foreign sources claim 10, with one pregnancy occurring right in the middle of the Long March. Yet, in the CCP's official narrative, the Long March was a martyrdom story of soldiers enduring extreme starvation and hardship while gritting their teeth to follow the party to the end. This creates a logical flaw that is nearly impossible to reconcile. Basic biology tells us that prolonged, high-intensity marches, combined with severe malnutrition, drastically reduce both sex drive and fertility. Furthermore, Chinese society has long possessed basic notions of birth control. Even illiterate peasants understood concepts like withdrawal and viewed semen as the seed of life. Mao Zedong, a man of vast knowledge who read extensively, could not have been ignorant of this. Given such a high number of pregnancies, a reasonable explanation emerges. Their sexual activity was quite frequent, meaning they were neither overly exhausted nor malnourished. Therefore, either Mao and his wife enjoyed privileged treatment, embodying the Chinese idiom, when food and clothing are abundant, carnal desires arise, which directly contradicts the mythical narrative of officers and soldiers sharing the same hardships. Or the brutal difficulty of the Long March was heavily packaged and exaggerated by the CCP after the fact as a brainwashing lie. Either way, it thoroughly exposes the CCP's hypocrisy and shamelessness. Even stepping back, if conceiving occurred right before the Long March began, the 5 anti-encirclement campaigns were still a period of desperate crisis, where the CCP military suffered defeat after defeat and was forced into strategic retreat. Supplies and living conditions couldn't have been much better than during the Long March itself. If these pregnancies were intentional, the issue is even graver. It means Mao Zedong prioritized his personal desire for bloodline continuation over his self-proclaimed mission to serve the people wholeheartedly. While soldiers were freezing, starving, and risking death at any moment, he was prioritizing his own lineage. This stands in complete contradiction to the later CCP narrative that idolized Chairman Mao as utterly selfless and endlessly devoted. Furthermore, other high-ranking CCP officials similarly had multiple wives. In modern Chinese TV dramas, as well as everyday life, remarriage often comes with numerous complications, frequently facing resistance from children and public disapproval, as seen in countless discussions online, because Chinese people place immense value on marriage and family. Yet these powerful, great communists seem to harbor no such concerns whatsoever. Even more noteworthy is Mao's attitude toward his wives. His Zhejian suffered immensely for him, enduring repeated pregnancies amidst the chaos of war. Yet he showed no concern for her whatsoever, and quickly moved on to marry someone else. Had anyone else been the protagonist of such a story, modern internet forums would roundly condemn him as a scumbag who disrespects women. Strangely enough, Chinese netizens, who usually love playing moral police, continue to trust Mao implicitly and sing his praises. One has to ask, how could a man who doesn't even care for his own woman genuinely love millions of everyday people he has never met? There are countless other telltale signs of Mao deceiving the world, which cannot all be covered here. For instance, despite having access to the best medical team in the nation, he remained consistently obese. According to the official narrative, Chairman Mao worried about the common people every single day. If so, he should have been draining his mind and body, like Zhuge Liang, growing leaner with each passing day. Cult, like personality cults, are precisely the favorite tactic of authoritarian regimes. The CCP learned well from Stalin's legacy. From Mao's Little Red Book to Xi Jinping's various ideological publications on state governance today, every attempt to deify the leader's achievements stands in direct violation of Marxist thought. Propaganda songs like Chairman Mao is the great savior serve as a silent, bitter irony to the lyrics of the communist anthem, the Internationale. There are no supreme saviors. To create human happiness, we must depend on ourselves. Having covered the Constitution and the godlike leader, the CCP's daily diplomatic behavior offers another excellent angle of approach. As the Chinese saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. CCP propaganda constantly claims that Western imperialist powers refuse to give up their ambitions to destroy us, and that the whole world picks on China. But what kind of unsavory cronies do they actually associate with on a daily basis? Take Iran, which was engaged in military conflict not long ago. Their system is similar to China's, but even more extreme, especially regarding women. The minimum marriage age for females there can be as young as 9 to 13, accompanied by various cruel demands that strip away human rights, such as mandatory head coverings, as documented on UN websites. After Iranian leader Khamenei's death, the CCP issued statements condemning it as a gross violation of Iran's sovereignty and security, expressing firm opposition and strong condemnation. They accorded him high-spec condolences and secretly allowed, even encouraged, social media and select state media to glorify his supposed bravery, framing him as a hero who resisted evil America for his people's happiness, while censoring dissenting voices. This stirred up uninformed citizens into a frenzy of anger and tears, further cementing their hatred toward the United States. The CCP pulled the exact same tactic earlier, when Khamenei's brutal rule sparked widespread protests. Most Chinese people loudly denounced the U.S. for inciting internal unrest in other nations, yet never bothered to think, if the people could live in peace and work happily, exercising their freedom, why would they risk their lives to express dissatisfaction? How could local attachments thicker than water and lifelong religious faith be so easily defeated by American deceitful rhetoric? Among the CCP's close friends, North Korea ranks at the top. The CCP has long promoted its profound friendship with North Korea, attempting to construct a righteous narrative of two socialist states, collaborating for the well-being of their people. Yet, the horrors of this hereditary kingdom are plain for all to see. The leader lives in extreme luxury, eating himself plump, while the common people live hand to mouth. If you search North Korean slave labor on the Chinese intranet, you can still find plenty of negative reports. This shows that, while the CCP is shameless, it retains a shred of self-preserving pragmatism, terrified that excessive media protection of North Korea might spark further public outrage. The summary provided by Baidu, China's version of Google, is deeply hypocritical. On one hand, it does not deny the abysmal conditions of these workers, but on the other, it criticizes the term slave labor as inaccurate and subjective. Yet any modern person with a civilized education looking at such working conditions would find it hard to come up with any descriptor other than slave labor. The next close friend, of course, is Russia. The two authoritarian regimes claim a partnership with no limits and no forbidden zones, showcasing a level of cozy intimacy that is almost stomach-churning to watch. When the US and Iran clashed as mentioned earlier, the CCP condemned American aggression. Yet, when Russia launched its blatant, full-scale invasion of Ukraine, instead of upholding its claimed principle of respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations, the CCP parroted Moscow's propaganda verbatim through official mouthpieces like CCTV and the People's Daily. They packaged an anti-human, fascist war of aggression as Russia's righteous counteroffensive against NATO's eastward expansion, and even went so far as to brainwash the domestic public into worshipping the aggressor as Putin the Great. Karl, the conformist nerd, was also one of the duped, uninformed masses back then. Evidently, the CCP's operational logic has never been about justice or truth. It is a fickle, absurd model that shifts at the whim of its leadership. The CCP's current double standard toward Japan and Russia illustrates this perfectly. Tsarist Russia and the Soviet Union historically seized over 1.5 million square kilometers of Chinese territory, forced China to sign numerous unequal treaties, engineered Outer Mongolia's independence, and carried out tragic massacres like the 64 villages east of the river. Yet all of this blood and tears history has vanished from the internet and textbooks, leaving no trace behind. But what about Japan? Compared to the massive territories occupied by Russia, the Diaoyu Islands are a mere speck of land. Yet, the CCP spares no effort in hyping up the issue, even going so far as to establish an official Diaoyu Islands exclusive website, using it as a magic trick to divert domestic class conflict. During several patriotic anti-Japanese demonstrations, tacitly approved and incited by the CCP, countless mobs, having lost all reason under the banner of patriotism, frenziedly smashed Japanese, brand cars and destroyed Japanese style shops purchased with the hard-earned money of their fellow countrymen right on Chinese soil. Most tragically, an innocent Chinese citizen was struck in the skull with a U-lock by a so-called patriotic youth, simply for driving a Japanese car, leaving him permanently paralyzed on one side. Thanks to more than a decade of unrelenting, extreme nationalist brainwashing, such radical incidents have surged in recent years, with several Japanese citizens falling victim to violence. Furthermore, the CCP has aggressively halted civilian business activities containing Japanese elements, delivering a further blow to an already struggling economy. Karl the Judas frequently runs into rabid anti-Japanese, pro-war, and bloodthirsty comments across comment sections and group chats, even within groups dedicated to Japanese video games. In the end, he was forced to leave these group chats just to get some peace of mind out of sight. Looking back at records from years past, we find a pattern. Whenever the CCP needed economic growth, it promoted Sino-Japanese friendship, turning Japan into a major driving force for China's development. Back then, when the war had only recently ended, they put on a show of tolerance and magnanimity by waiving war reparations, treating prisoners of war kindly and asking the suffering Chinese people to learn to forgive. Then, naturally, all the credit was claimed by the leadership, with every media outlet competing to praise the great leaders for being farsighted and conquering people with virtue. In recent years, however, as the war has receded into distant history, they have instead used every tool at their disposal to cultivate hatred and warmongering impulses among the Chinese public. State media shamelessly proclaim that Forgetting history means betrayal. So isn't forgetting Russia's history of aggression an even more shameless betrayal? It is clear that the CCP ruling class manipulates the public purely for its own self-interest. The so-called national interest is nothing more than a convenient narrative designed to dupe the human mind. If apologists want to defend the regime at this point, they will inevitably say, Russia's actions happened too long ago to dwell on. Yet, they certainly don't apply that same logic to Tomokazu Harimoto. Simply because this athlete visited the Togo shrine, he was subjected to a torrent of vicious abuse across the entire Chinese internet, with his ancestors dragged through the dirt. Togo Hachiro was also a figure from that same historical era. So why is he deemed so much more hateful than the Russians? Given that Japan is closer to China in both ethnicity and culture, why are common citizens expected to embrace Russia while harboring deep-seated hatred for Japan? Shouldn't there at least be equal treatment? At the end of the day, it is the CCP stirring the pot behind the scenes. The points summarized here are more than enough to prove that the CCP is far from genuine toward the Chinese people, relying heavily on deception and cover-ups. Yet, all this evidence can still be uncovered right within the censored Chinese intranet. This proves that, with their current tactics, they cannot truly fool citizens who possess a basic level of critical thinking and research skills. Even a domestic child like the model pupil Carl, who was fed fanatical ideology from a young age, can gradually develop doubts, begin thinking critically, and recognize the truth. However, no one should make the mistake of thinking that awakening the Chinese people is an easy task. The harsh reality is that no matter what evidence or arguments Carl the Quisling presented, he could not change the minds of those around him, ultimately ending up alienated, abandoned, and alone. This is precisely where the CCP's cleverness lies. They use the media to deploy endless patches, stuffing them into short-form content that people scroll through during their downtime, to completely disorient anyone trying to dig for the truth, as long as the effort required to verify these patches exceeds the public's knowledge base or practical capabilities. Citizens raised on party loyalty will inevitably abandon critical thought out of a deep-seated desire for security and allegiance. For example, they will claim that if land were privately owned, the wealthy would constantly find ways to buy it up, eventually concentrating all land in the hands of the rich, while the poor are left without a foothold. At this, Chinese citizens will naively believe the narrative, never stopping to ask, why does the state we trust so deeply make buying a home harder for us than it is in capitalist countries? They will claim that ballots in democratic nations are easily manipulated by capital, leaving the people unable to protect their own rights, and that it is therefore better to hand over all decision-making to NPC representatives and great leaders. The excuses are endless. Anyone trying to persuade others finds themselves powerless against the web of lies spun by the state apparatus. Even if one had the skill and energy to debunk every single piece of rhetoric, the listener would lack the patience to hear it out. After all, even if it's true, so what? Will it reduce their mortgage payments? From Mr. Inkblade's perspective, this seemingly hopeless, awakened person's dilemma is actually a relatively lenient state of affairs compared to what lies ahead. Once CCP-related institutions master AI tools, they will easily search out, alter, or delete content that triggers public doubt and reflection. They will then mass-produce highly convincing fictional narratives to ensure the new generation believes them without a shadow of a doubt. The current state of the intranet is already something they have bent over backward to create. In their pursuit of objectivity and rationality, people inside China already find it hard to accept anti-CCP leaks from foreign forces as fact, often dismissing them as too exaggerated or unbelievable. The same fate will likely await the information we can search for today. Perhaps one day, we won't even be able to see negative news about the CCP's allies anymore. That is why we must seize the opportunity present right now. Mr. Inkblade hopes everyone will join in searching for solid evidence that can still be found within the Chinese intranet to help awaken those inside the firewall who possess critical thought and conscience. This can also serve as a personal challenge for one's research and analytical abilities. The content presented this time may not be comprehensive or professional enough, but consider it a modest attempt to spark further discussion. One final disclaimer: even if everything said in this video consists of verifiable facts from the domestic intranet, along with reasonable inferences, the creator still faces the risk of arrest and imprisonment in real life. If no new content is posted for an extended period, or if old content suddenly vanishes, it means the worst has happened. This silent cessation of updates will speak even louder than new critiques in exposing the true evil of the CCP.
Thank you for watching. I sincerely apologize for not being able to appear on camera and read the script due to self-protection and production efficiency. If you found anything useful, please give me a like to show your support or leave your comment.